All right, there we go. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm broadcasting to you from Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm here with my good friends Karen and Catherine and Dan. And today we're going to continue our discussion of the book, Your Soul's Plan by Rober Schwartz. And we've been discussing this book for a little while. We've gotten into the first chapter a little bit. It seems like it's just a very deep discussion. There's so many things to cover. Excuse me, but before we get going, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves. And for those of you who are watching this as a recording, we would love to have you on here to dig into this discussion. The more people we have, the more insights that we can gain, and the more we can all learn and grow. And so look at the links below this video. You'll find a link to get under our Facebook group where you can connect with us and participate. So with that, go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys, and then Catherine, you can take it.
I'm Karen Lohoff, and I live in Mesa, Arizona, which is a large suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. And I heard that the temperature was 112 yesterday, which is enough to fry my brains, to say nothing about observing what's going on around me. So we'll see if I can keep on track. I did get my my Kindle straightened around so that I could accept the book last night, but I haven't read through chapter 1, so I'll have to see if I can keep up.
Oh, okay. I'm Dan Sisik. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we too are over the 100-degree mark. I think we got to 107, maybe a little bit more. I know it was definitely hot when I got out of work yesterday. Um, and I'm sure it's going to be even more today. I think it's like supposed to be maybe 110 or so. I just know it's getting hot, which I like the heat, but I don't like it quite this early. I like it more when we get into June. So, but looking forward to continuing the discussion on the book.
Good morning. This is Catherine Clement. I'm in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and it's a love-hate relationship with the weather here. I mean, it's either horrible or beautiful, one or the other. It goes from one extreme to the other. But we have a beautiful week ahead of us, and I'm enjoying being out in the country. Especially, I'm surrounded by cows, which makes me very happy. So, especially with all the babies out in the field right now. So this morning we're going to cover some more definitions. I'm not sure, and we've mentioned this before, on the Kindle version, it's very hard to figure out where you're at in the book. It doesn't really track the chapters, like when you're looking at a book and you can see exactly where a chapter ends and where it begins. So hopefully I haven't skipped too far ahead in preparing for this. It's on my Kindle, it says it's chapter 3, but I don't think it is. When I start covering it, if I have skipped way ahead, let me know. Basically, because a lot of people aren't familiar with this sort of information, and in fact, I think all of us agreed that in our upbringing, we were taught that many of these things were, quote, evil, or some kind of satanic something, and just stay away from it. So thankfully, I had that one aunt that always told me that I wasn't imagining things, which was really paramount in my life, because there's a couple of ways when somebody's open, just like with anything else in your life, there's different ways to look at it. And I believe that there are a lot of people that are highly medicated on psychotropic drugs, are locked up in mental institutions because they went into a therapist's office and started talking about hearing voices and seeing things that aren't there. And for me, I mean, that's just regular everyday life, and I don't find anything abnormal about that whatsoever, and especially not clinically abnormal. So I think it's important to understand that, um, we all have these gifts. And I think as I cover some of these terms, you guys are going to realize that you have these gifts too. Isn't that right? My dog just came up and is so smiling at me right now. so, so let's talk about it. Last week we talked about, well, for the past couple of weeks we've covered, the difference between mediums and channels and psychics, but we're going to go over a little bit more specific terms today, which really separate the difference in the different ways that people receive information. So the first one we're going to cover is clairaudience. And you may or may not have heard of these terms, and I don't know who came up with these terms or who decided these things, but I can definitely agree because I have all of these things. So I can see where they should be separated because some people have some and not others. Clairaudience is when you hear non-physical beings. So you're actually hearing a voice talk to you, just like if somebody was standing next to you talking to you. You hear it that clearly. You hear, you def, you, I need to be careful how I word things. I definitely get a sense of whether it's a male or a female presence, which has always been interesting to me because I do believe, and it does mention in this book as well and in many other places, that as souls, we're not male or female. Oftentimes, angels are uh, people in pictures and things like they're not male or female. It's a combination of both. And I think when we come into a body, we tend to express, we kind of have to choose a body, male or female, before we come in. But we have both of those inside of us. And I think all of us can resonate with that, at least. And I think that's why we see a lot of transgender and different sexual expressions and gender expressions. I don't find that unusual or I just don't find that unusual at all, knowing what I know about souls and that they're both. So I never have quite understood the opposition against that, but I think that comes, sadly from teachings, religious teachings and things. So clairaudience, actually hearing. Now, as I was preparing for this today, one of the things that stood out to me about clairaudience is that it is a form of telepathy, and I don't know why I never really put that together. Because I always felt like, and I've said several times, I was so telepathic as a child. That's because um, I was looking at telepathy as only the communication between myself and another human being on the planet. In other words, I had a friend that I could be in my bed and say to her, Tracy, meet me at the Y at 3 o'clock, and she'd be at the Y at 3 o'clock. Like we were that connected. And I never extended the term telepathy to include other beings. So clairaudience and telepathy actually go hand in hand together. And I just never made that connection. So that was very interesting. So I'm still telepathic because I hear voices all the time. So I just never associated those two. Um, Before I move on to the next one, I'd love to hear any comments or questions or anything like that, rather than just go down a whole list and maybe confuse them.
I'd like to I guess as I think about it, I'm not even going to share who in my life it was, but it was someone who's not open, not open. I can't tell you how many phone conversations we've had where I've shared things, ideas, suggestions, just like even just trying to go to sleep, you know. Um, and yet, this individual knows and has told me through the years that there was someone that she wanted to marry. She wanted to marry this person really badly. And she prayed about it and she got a definite verbal no, which I was always surprised about because she's always been a closed individual. And I don't know how she would have uh, gotten the direction she did without something like that. And it's been the only thing that she's experienced. But uh, I was thinking about that and how, as open as I am, I don't believe I've ever had an experience that was audio, an audio experience.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I was going to jump out for a second. I you mentioned how when you were younger, you were even more open or more, you know, everything. And it's interesting to me because I feel the same way. It's like when I was younger, I was just more open or more, I don't know, not closed off, maybe. I don't know. And as I got older, it just kind of seemed like I've lost a lot of my intuition and lost a lot of my just knowing. And which is really, really weird to me because, I didn't start meditating until I got older, but I got more fearful as I got older. So that kind of makes me wonder. But yeah, I have had very few experiences with just hearing voices, but I have, I hear myself talk to myself all the time. I have somebody in there, and I have multiple somebodies in there that I talk to all the time as far as that goes. Uh, but I feel like that a lot of time is more like just that when you're arguing with yourself and that's all, like, in my opinion, I feel like that's a lot of just ego attitude. But I did have a very, very strong experience one time of my grandmother speaking to me, and it woke me up out of I wasn't sleeping. I was just I don't even know what the heck I was doing. I was a teenager. Who knows? I could have been doing anything. And I just heard my grandmother say something to me. I don't remember what it was, but I just heard a voice very clear in my ear. And I was like, that was weird, just out of the blue, randomly. Now she was still with us on this plane. She had not passed at that time. And when that happened, I was like, that was odd. And so I called her. I was like, everything okay? Just out of the blue, everything okay? I mean, everything was, but it was just one of those kind of things. And she was like, well, I was thinking about you. And I was like, well, I just heard you say something to me. And, we just had a conversation about it. It was just real interesting. And, but it was clear as day. It was her voice. Like you said, she was sitting like right next to me, even though we're miles and miles apart. And, so that was just really interesting. It's probably more along the lines of like what you were saying, telepathy versus clairaudience. But yeah, definitely interesting. But then another thing that popped up at the beginning when you were talking about how a lot of times we're kind of taught if we go to church or we're in religion or whatever, we're taught these things are like evil, and yet what's odd about that is contradictory because in the Bible it says that, Moses heard directly from God. Obviously, that was some kind of a channeling. And then, Mark, Luke, John, and the Gospels, where they get that? Obviously, that was a channeling. So, you have to kind of take things with a grain of salt, if you will, when it comes to what people say and what they really mean or what they don't fully understand and then they're trying to say. So, I think it's interesting, but and then when you're talking about people being in mental institutions, um, because other people are scared, it's heartbreaking. But it's happened all over the eons. Witches were burned for the same kind of reasons because people were scared of them. So I'm glad that our world is heading in a direction where we are more open to everything. Even if not everybody is, we still have a lot more people that are out there and expressing and talking about these things. And, it can't be a bunch of mumbo jumbo if there's more and more and more people that are talking about and experiencing these things and sharing them with other people. And yeah, so I'm glad we're studying this book because it just is another gateway to understanding. So that's my thoughts for now.
I was going to jump out and share a little. I know that me and my sister, I have a sister, we're estranged and we're not close at all anymore. But when we were growing up in the environment that we both grew up in when we were kids, we could look at each other and kind of know and sense what each other was thinking and feeling because we relied on each other, I think, a lot. And I was trying to be the protector of her as best I could, even though I didn't realize it when I was younger. Um, Being only 13 and a half months apart. So we were very close in age. Um, so I have experienced that. I've had one very vivid dream that I remember as a kid, and I've never shared it, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it was very vivid about me and my portrayal and some things of the type of person I am in life and how I tend to be a peacemaker, but I tend to fight and go overboard to protect those that I love and care about in ways that it's not. I don't physically fight. I don't, but I try to show it very in how I respond and how I act and how I am. And I think that from out of that dream, I think that's where some of where I'm at today, as well as living through what I lived through as a kid, made me But I have had one instance, and this was back when I was going through. Um, I was having panic attacks because I was lost my job. I was coming out of trying to get my mortgage modified, which I did. But I finally got to a point where there was when I just had to just let go. And I'll be honest, I just let go, and all I could say was Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I mean, that's all I had left to hold on to. Somehow that night I got some peace. I never heard anything audibly, and I don't remember if it was that night or if it was one of the other nights during one of the very peaceful sleeps where I was able to start having. I remember this is gonna sound weird, and but I could smell a color. That color is so definite in my brain. I know I smelled it. I know what what it represents to me. And in that, I've never smelled it again. I would so love to smell it again because it was just such a reassuring, peaceful, strong, royal sense of, that just gave me comfort. And it's weird. And I don't know if anybody's ever had that ever before. I've never shared that with anybody, nobody, because even to me, it was like, I don't understand how I could smell a color. It just, so throwing that out there to the whole world to hear. Um, so in that, it's even to me and into my thoughts and my brain process and into my beliefs, it it's not swayed me from it. In fact, it actually added to my beliefs, which is weird, if you can understand what I'm saying. Um, but I thought I'd throw it out there because it just seemed appropriate. And one of the right times and places to speak about something like that. So that's something I've experienced.
Beautiful. So everybody has experienced it to some degree, either personally or through someone else, which is great. I have to say that reading the Bible as I'll just term as a mystic, we'll just term it that way. The Bible reads much differently than the way that it was interpreted to me as a child and the way that I hear it interpreted by some congregations. But there are things like you pointed out, Samantha. You know, Moses was hearing voices. Most of it is written on information that was quote channeled. So they tended to. The thing, it's not that I don't believe the same things necessarily as religions, is because they all tend to have a lot of the same beliefs. They just kind of wrap it in a different package, right? But the thing that I dislike about it is that it does, for me, it forces separation, which I think is exactly the opposite of what we need to do. It always points to, that the priest is the only one that can kick the demon out of the house, or this person is the only one that could get this communication from God. We all get communication from God every day, whether you realize it or recognize it or not, period. You're getting it, okay? So that's what I don't like, is setting people aside. And that's why I keep saying, as I'm bringing up these different terms, we all have these. You might just not know. And people laugh at me. My old landlord used to laugh at me all the time because one day we were talking and we were talking about colors, interestingly enough, Dan, and I was telling him there's so many more colors that we don't see, and he was just like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you have no idea how dampened our senses are here. There are so many more colors. There are so many more musical notes. There's so many more smells, and there's so much more of everything that we just don't uh, pick up on here because of this cloak or whatever that we come in with." So, um, moving on a little bit. He refers to, and these are terms that he's going to use throughout the book, and that's why I'm trying to just kind of set it up so that everybody understands what these words are and doesn't get confused later on. So when he talks about spirit, he's just talking about non-physical. Um, Spirit could be a term that's interchangeably used with God. So, I mean, all of us may have a little bit of different definitions about these words. So that's why we're trying to come to somewhat of a centralized version here. Clairsentience. This is typically what you might have heard me refer to as being empathic. So, clairsentience is when you feel the emotion of other people. And before we started recording today, we were just kind of checking in with each other. How are you doing? Because there's so much going on in the world right now. And I was saying that, I'm holding it together here because I fortunately have the tools to do that. But it's very difficult as a clairsentient person or an empathic person. Uh, and I think all of us have this, but it may be kind of turned off on some people. But when it's on, and the whole nation is going through multiple traumas like we are right now, which I really think we're finally getting to the work that we came here to do. So I don't, as horrible as all this is, I'm almost fearful to speak because the last thing that I want to do is minimize anyone's pain or suffering, because people have lost loved ones to the virus. Of course, we have the horrible George Floyd situation going on, and before him, there were many, many others before him that have suffered injustices, and that is why we're seeing the amount of violence that we're seeing right now. People have just been overcome at this point, and I don't want to minimize the pain of that in any way. Trying to keep some form of sanity about it in my mind, because when I dwell in my emotions and my feelings and the things that I'm picking up from the world right now, I literally could just stay in the bathroom all day and vomit. Like, it's that strong. It's just, the emotions are overwhelming. But in order to get through that, personally, I have to find some sort of purpose for all that suffering and all that pain. And for me, that comes through a belief that this book brings forth, which is that we plan this before we come in. And you could look at today's situation and say, there's no way we would have planned that. But wouldn't we? I mean, think about it. Wouldn't we? Because I think as souls, we could sit up there and say, okay, we need to open people's eyes to the indifference that we show each other, and the hate and the anger and the lack of um, togetherness. We're always separating, whether it's over race or religion or whatever. This is a common thread amongst humans. And I can totally see us, planning to say, okay, enough is enough. We have to straighten out humans a little bit, and show them, or under bring everybody to the understanding that we really are all connected, that there's the human race. There's not all the human race has a lot of colors, and a lot of cultures, but at the end of the day, we all want the same things. We all want, family, friends, love, peace, joy. We all want our basic needs met, and there's just all this separation. We have to get rid of it. So how can we do that? Well, this is going to pop up, this virus. We're going to bring this virus in, and everybody's going to see that this doesn't just affect this population or that population or the other population. It doesn't just affect the wealthy or the poor. It affects everybody. Maybe that will bring everybody into alignment. As we saw the politicians take that virus and turn it into, again, a separating thing where we have one party doing this and one party doing this. And so, okay, well, we failed that. What can we do now? What's plan B? How are we going to bring us together? So then we come, here comes forward the violence from the police department. And personally, and I can't speak for everybody here, so I won't, but I'm guessing we're pretty much all on the same page on this, as we are on most things. But what a tragedy. It has to stop. The violence perpetrated by those who are supposed to be protecting us has to stop. And I can totally see us as souls setting this thing up. So, without trying to minimize anyone's pain or take away the emotion, because it's the emotion that will drive us to make the changes, right? That's what we respond to as humans. If we can separate our emotion from things, we can go through life without anything touching us, right? They're called psychopaths. And it's it's a way to get through this world. It's a way to navigate it without really getting touched on a personal level. But so we can't stop the emotion. We need the emotion to drive us as humans. But hopefully, and I pray with all of my heart all the time, that these things will bring us together instead of driving us further apart, because I think that's what it continually tries to show us. We see the same thing, and I'll just use Oklahoma as a good example. We see the same thing here in Oklahoma when a tornado comes through and destroys an entire town or something. The way that people, maybe somebody who's never helped anybody else in their entire life, the emotion of seeing that devastation and losing everything and how it affects everybody, the emotion of that drives people to bond with other people and help other people. It is, I believe, God's way of bringing us together and trying to kind of bitch slap us and wake us up a little bit and say, hey, you're not all these separate beings. You're one, and we're God. And we're not, it's not just one, you're not just here to just live your little life and not change anything. Everything you do and everything you think changes things. So it's huge, and much like energy gets, I think, cleared from an area through a heavy rainstorm or something like that. I'm sure you've all experienced kind of a heaviness and a denseness around you, and then maybe a major storm comes through and it just kind of clears the energy of things. As much as I dislike all the looting and destruction that's going on, these people need to express this angst and anger somehow, some way, or they're just going to explode. Like this has to come out. And I'm not condoning the way that it's happening, but I'm just saying it is serving, I believe it is serving humanity by clearing energy, anger energy, fear energy, um, separation energy. So enough about that. I'll move on. Clairvoyant is the word that most people associate with the word psychic. So these are people who visualize. So they might get a vision. And I want to go back because several of you were talking about dreams, and dreams can be very prophetic. There's dreams, and then there's dreams. And I see you shaking your head there, Dan. there's just like, sometimes you wake up, most of I don't even remember my dreams. Very rarely do I remember a dream. I used to remember my dreams a lot. I'm not sure why I don't now, but sometimes when I need to, like, I remember them. And sometimes they're just stupid dreams and I can very easily write them off. Sometimes I'll get a dream that is so real that there's no way I can write it off, and it never goes away. It stays in my memory forever. And those are the dreams that I just really feel like have some sort of message for us that we need to pay attention to. Many people turn off. I think everyone is psychic, but I think for many people, because we do tend to be more open as children, I think sometimes we, as children, we might have those prophetic, either a dream or a vision, or maybe even picking up on something clairaudiently. And we, as a child, we are excited about that. And so maybe we express that to somebody, and then they immediately tamp that down. Oh, that's just your imagination, or oh, that's just this, or that's just that, or maybe even they condemn us and say, no, that's the devil, or don't pay attention to that. And so and another thing I think that happens is sometimes we'll have a prophetic dream and we realize there's nothing we can do with that information to, let's say that it's a bad thing that you see that's going to happen. You don't want to announce that this bad thing is going to happen and then it doesn't happen and everybody calls you stupid, so crazy. Yeah, like Dan, he was afraid to tell about that dream that he had. So it's very much the same thing. These fears pop up, so we damp things down. Or we realize, even if, let's say I saw that a major earthquake was going to hit today, even if I could tell somebody, they wouldn't believe me. Even if they did believe me, what differences is it going to make? So, in other words, we tamp it down for a multitude of reasons, but we're still tamping it down. And one of the things that I feel uh, is I find to be very prevalent, and it's extremely prevalent in the Bible, is ask and ye shall receive. And I believe that that very much is true when it comes to some of these abilities. Um, we have the ability to tamp them down or to ask for more or to say we're ready for more. Um, we also can't lie to ourselves about that, though. I mean, you can lie to yourself, but you can't really lie to spirit, if you get where I'm going. So you might think it's cool that you want to talk to dead people, but if spirit knows that you really can't handle that, you're probably not going to go forward with that gift, if that makes any sense. Um, like for me, I pretty much said, no, I don't want to talk to dead people all the time. I don't mind getting messages, things like that, but I just don't want to see and be bombarded by spirits trying to communicate with others. Now there are people that love that work, and that's great. I'm glad they do, because it really helps a lot of people to bring forward some of those messages from spirit. Um, let's stop there and see if you guys. So we talked about spirit being non-physical. We talked about visualizing and how that can be pulled into dreams as well, and how some dreams can be very prophetic and others are just stuff, I think, that your mind maybe hasn't gotten finished with during the day, so it tries to work on it at night. Now, the other thing I want to bring in before I open it back up is that um, I don't I don't think we just lay here and our brain kind of turns off and then we wake up in the morning. I think we lay here and our soul goes elsewhere and works on other shit while this body is resting. And maybe it goes to another dimension, maybe it goes to for more education. Like I used to have those recurring dreams about going and being taught about stewardship of the earth. Um, so I think we're very active when we're asleep and quote dreaming or even not dreaming. I think we're still very active as non-physical beings during those times. And I think that's why, you know, but I think that's why sometimes we have some of these strange dreams. I think it explains the phenomenon of what is that called? Where people wake up and they experience sleep. Maybe it'll come to me. Sleep something. They feel like something's sitting on their chest, like they can't breathe. Um, they can't move. They can't speak. And that is typically associated with a quote evil spirit or entity attacking them. I think that is a complete misinterpretation of being out of your body and your body's trying to wake up, but your spirit is still outside, like working on stuff. And so you're like, your eyes open, but you're not fully back into your body. Now, some people think that when you're not fully in your body, you're dead. That's not true. People travel out of their body purposefully and non-purposefully all the time. So I think that that very, very scary thing that people experience, I think it is a misinterpretation that their spirit's just not quite back in there yet, and they're kind of in that limbo space. So now I'll open it back up. What do you guys think about all that?
Some of the stuff I've heard of and seen and dealt with and and things like that. And I know that I have a good friend that has actually gone to psychics and been told things, but then after what he's told me, and then looking at it, doesn't seem like that has held true. So I don't know on that end whether that person was real or not, or that's where. But I do believe that there are people that have abilities that can, um, just like in the Bible, relay messages and interact and bring messages, information, um, things to confirm or show or help somebody understand some things, or help them learn something. Or like for me, a couple times I've had somehow, somewhere, I've gotten a confirmation of something just through either somebody saying something or something happening or seeing something. And I do believe in that. I do believe in those type of things, and I believe they are uh, divine guidance and stuff for my interpretation of how I look at it. But universal, the universe or infinite intelligence or whatever, so it's allowing you to receive something in a medium which you will, at least at that point, be open to receiving. Because I agree with you. I think we all have a bit capabilities and stuff that we either close off, shut down, or we don't know how to tap into. We don't understand, or when we have, maybe, um, I'm talking loosely, people in general, um, it scares them, and it's so out of the norm or so foreign, they you know, don't know how to respond, and they kind of just, oh, okay, don't understand it, don't want to go there, type of thing. And so with that, I think that's where a lot of the world is, because I think, that brain power that we have is so much more than what we use and allow ourselves to use, I think, sometimes. And I think some of it may have been divinely kind of had a switch thrown in order to, not saying that it's disconnected, but just kind of switch thrown to not allow it until either the right time, appropriate time or place, or or however things progress. I don't know what else how to say that, but I think that's where a lot of that comes from.
I had to take an unexpected break. um, so I missed a lot. But I wanted to mention that yesterday I noticed a smell, and I noticed it was a fragrance that I'd smelled at my grandmother's house. And I mentioned it to the people that were gathered around the meal table, that I had smelled this. And they said, "What was it?" And I said, "Well, I think it was a floral, um, uh, a hanky that was, my grandmother raised really a lot of flowers, and she would gather them up, wrap a hanky around the stems, and go walk them to whoever she wanted to take them to." And I thought it was that. And I noticed that I have a I've had experiences with smell. I don't know if we've come to that. And I've had experiences with simply being aware, distinguishing, male from female and distinguishing a message. And I appreciate those things really a lot. I also recognize that my best friend that passed away, and this is really terrible. This is this is why I'm where I'm at. I don't know if it was this most recent February or February a year ago, but I have been expecting her. I mean, we talked a lot through the years that we did things together. I've been expecting her to come and, visit with me. And I've been reading about how there's no emotion. I don't know, maybe we talked about that in the last couple of times. There's no emotion, which to me is really strange, to have visitors and they're just kind of, I just kind of lay it out and don't really, seem excited to see me. And also, I would have believed that she would have just wanted to talk with me about all sorts of things. And I'm just not sensing that. So I don't know if I've pronounced myself unworthy. I'm just not sure what that's about. But I'm anticipating that as we read this book and talk about it with our different personalities, I'll get a better sense of that.
I had to step away for a few minutes, so I didn't hear everything, but I was just outside the screen door and could hear some of what you were talking about, Catherine. And it seems like at the beginning you were talking about a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world, and the just so much pain and suffering and destruction, and one thing that I've noticed over my lifetime, as far as like disasters that happen and then the cleansing that happens afterwards, and I've seen that in so many different ways, and we just forget that after. It's horrible when we're going through it, I know, and yet it's this, just, it's like afterwards there's just like this, it's like there's been a release of so much painful energy and emotion, and even when it's something that's completely not a man-made thing, like tsunamis or earthquakes or tornadoes, or like when we lived on the river, we had flooding a lot, and it was always a renewal. And um it's like I feel so strongly for people that suffer so much in those times. I can feel it in my deepest cells of the suffering that's happening. And yet I'm on that same note, I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. It's not what you think it is. It's not what you think it is. And because we have this set in our minds. So many people have it set in their minds that it's separate, that it's so separate. And this is, you get this one person in your life and they're so amazing. And then when they're gone, everything is horrible and the world's come to an end. And, 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 and that causes so much suffering in this world. And if we could just get back to, we realize that we are all one. We're all one, whether we're here or whether we're not here, whether we passed on to the other side, we're all together. I mean, and there's so many religions that believe that when you pass on, you get back to your family, right? You're all back in heaven, and you're in the wonderful part of heaven, and yet we cause ourselves so much pain on this plane of existence because of this emotional roller coaster that we're on. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be this painful. We're making it painful on ourselves. And it tears me apart so much. And I didn't realize until, I got to my, later in this time in my life, in the past probably 10 years or so, that I was very empathic. And because the pain and the anger and the everything that's going on in the world, I have a hard time with it. It just bombards me, and I'm very sensitive to it. And so I I have to not. I just have to cut myself off from it a lot of times because it's just so uncomfortable, and I just can't. I can't even deal with it a lot of times because I'm just like, people, it's not that bad. I know it seems like it here, but we're making it ourselves. So, you know, we that's kind of what was coming up for me when you were talking. And I know you spoke on a number of other things too, but I was distracted by my dog. So that's all I have for now.
I have been thinking as I took care of the mess that I had to deal with, what they're doing in Phoenix, pardon me, for the homeless. And they're taking care of the civic center, and they're trying to do stuff so that they can take the homeless and put them in there. But in the interim, and I told you that we had 112-degree temperature yesterday, in the interim, they're putting them out in the parking lot. Now in Phoenix, a parking lot is asphalt. Imagine sun on asphalt, no shade. If there's any kind of trees at all, and I doubt that there are, they're palm trees with, those little fingers of fan leaves and stuff like that. No shade, no shade. They're talking about, how it's going to cause them to die to be right there. They're given little tents and they're given little sleeping bags. I know that there's a lot of effort put into thinking about, providing them something, but it's just so difficult to imagine. You look at someone, the perspiration just pouring off their face, and they're hopping from foot to foot, and then you think, well, they created this for themselves with this virus. They're concerned about this virus and the heat and all of that, and there's just so much going on that we have to take responsibility for, besides what we can say in our lives that we've done. It's really difficult to even want to think about that. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about.
Oh, how horrible. I mean, even just here when it's in the high 80s, I take my dog out, I have to put my shoes on because the pavement is so hot. So I just hurts my heart. Um, so clairsalience is the smell. Clairsalience is the clair for smelling things, and that's a very I think that happens to more people than have admitted it openly, because I think they have trouble communicating with us sometimes, but that seems to be a way that they can get our attention a little bit easier, even if people are not quite open to receiving messages. They can handle coming across a smell that reminds them of grandma, or. So, and that's typically a very, very comforting thing, those smells. So claircognizance, this is something that has been mentioned several times as we've been talking, and that is an inner knowing. That is when Samantha says, and I feel that the anger and the fear in every cell of my body, but I just want to say it's going to be okay. That is an inner knowing that things are not as they appear. And I can't tell you what they are, but I can tell you that things are not as they appear. And just like you said, Samantha, most of our suffering is self afflicted, or however you say that. Like we do it to ourselves, most of our suffering. Um, just the words, everything is going to be okay. They're hard to believe sometimes when you're in a low place, because when you're there without any hope, you can't see that things like there's a lot of people on the planet right now, especially in the midst of all the riots, that don't feel like things are going to be okay. Things have not been okay forever. And why are they suddenly going to be okay? And they're trapped in that emotion of being unfairly persecuted, which I'm really, please, nobody, please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. When we're talking about things are going to be okay, we're talking about a much bigger picture, on the grand scale of things. If this book is true, and if we do pre-plan things as a soul group before we come in, and if we exist past this lifetime into other experiences, these memories, this angst, and all this suffering that everybody's going through right now, we won't even remember it. And I don't mean to minimalize it when I say that. Please don't misinterpret me. But in the grand scheme of things, these things that cause us all this pain and suffering are the things that open us up to the compassion, open us up. I mean, that again is a choice, whether you open up to that or you stay closed about that. And I don't know if that determines how many times you come back into lifetimes. We've talked about um, coming back into new experiences. I don't know if it's something that we have to do because, we didn't get it right last time, or if it's just something that we do to experience something different. Like I said before, I think we get bored up there and decide to come back as something completely outrageous just to occupy ourselves. And I'm actually writing a book right now about pain. And one of there are a lot of people on the planet that have an understanding that pain is created, and it serves a purpose. And why wouldn't it? It's everything serves a purpose. So of course, pain serves a purpose. What that purpose is up to interpretation. But there's a lot of theories out there that pain is something that our body creates because we're bored, because we're not um, utilizing our creative powers for what we were supposed to. And so our body comes out and screams at us, trying to get our attention. Hey, wake up, you can't just, you're, you are this creative being. You can't just lay here in a puddle of tears all the time. You're here to do something. And the pain is to push us into other things. So no matter what you're experiencing, and no matter how, quote, real it feels, um, it is a construct because we live in a construct. all of this is a construct, and I don't know how to. It doesn't make the suffering less. It doesn't make the suffering go away, but um, it helps you not stay in the suffering if you can open up to some of these other concepts. In other words, do I still feel, just completely overwhelmed with sorrow and anger and sadness as I watch these things develop across our nation? Absolutely. Does that mean I go take my life 5 minutes after because I can't deal with those emotions? No, because I can take a step back and look at what that pain is serving and how it's serving us. And for me, I do believe that it's pre-planned, and so it does serve a purpose. And that keeps me going because I want to see how this plays out. I want to see if we can fix this shit. And I think we all do, and I think that's why we come here and try. Um, I don't understand the end purpose really, but that's what feels right to me. When we talk about this inner knowing, it usually comes as a feeling. We can usually feel if someone is being authentic with us. We can usually feel if something, people say, oh, that feels right. That feels right. Or no, that doesn't feel right. you know? So I think, we have the ability to sense these things out. And one of them is through claircognizance, this inner knowing or feeling. And that feeling is so calm, Samantha, just like you said it's going to be all right. It comes from such a calm and non-emotional place. And sometimes, and it doesn't always have to be like this huge uh, spiritual knowing. It can be simple things like you look at a bird that you've never seen before and you say, oh, look at that bird, what kind of bird is that? And then all of a sudden, even though you had no idea what kind of bird that was, you've never seen that kind of bird before, but suddenly you know what this bird is, and you look it up and there it is. And you're like, whoa, where did that come from? So to me, that just shows that we're like interconnected with each other, and we can draw off of other people's intelligence and education. We can draw, perhaps, and I believe, from our previous experiences. And there's a lot of people that teach this, and it's typically referred to as quantum work these days. That's the new term. I mean, quantum, that word's been used for many, many years, but that tends to be the new buzzword, is doing this quantum work where you actually, let's say you have something in your life that you just can't figure out how you can get through this. You, in your imagination, as we would refer to it, I think creative mind is better than imagination, but in your imagination, you would go, uh, put it in simple terms, schedule a Zoom with your previous self that is in another dimension that has already surpassed. Oh, who's going? I didn't see who it popped up for. Dan, you want to come out and say something before you go?
Yeah, I would love to stay on and listen on, but I'm gonna take off. I got some things I got to get done and do, and so sorry. I normally don't like to jump off, before we finish, but I'll see you guys next week and talk to you later. And love you all.
Love you too. Have a great week. Yeah, and I see we're
Happy Dan.
past the time too,
Yeah.
so I'm running on, and we'll have to shore this up and wait for next week. But I lost my train of thought. But I think that, I was talking about making a Zoom appointment with your other self and ask that self, how do I get through this? Or if you don't feel comfortable consulting with yourself, ask if there's an angel that you resonate with, if there's maybe a passed on loved one that you resonate with, make that connection to something outside of yourself and just ask. The words ask and you shall receive are so incredibly true. And so if you're trying to get past something in your life and you just can't figure it out, there are many people teaching that you just tap into an intelligence outside of yourself and ask, what is the solution to this problem? And often people get resolution, sometimes within seconds of direction of where they should go and what they should do. And to me, the ability to do that and get those answers is proof to me that we are all connected. And I've got more terms and more stuff. I could go on for days, but I can't do that. So I'm going to open it back up and we'll try to wrap this around now. Can you guys talk about the inner knowing for just a second before we close up?
Well, I really appreciate the inner knowing, and I think the first time that I was aware of it, and I'm pretty sure I've shared this story before, but I had just left my first husband, and my oldest teenage son was really struggling with that. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and he wasn't there, and I was so concerned. A city of a few million people. How do you find one person? Especially if you don't have the same head that they have. And I had grabbed my keys and I was headed for the door to the garage, and right next to the garage was the little kitchen for this townhome, and there was a refrigerator, and at the refrigerator I just felt my father-in-law was there. I just felt like, I didn't see, I didn't hear, I didn't smell, I didn't any of those things. I just felt like he was there. And as a result of that, I went back to bed and fell asleep. And that was totally not me as a mom. That just was not me as a mom. But the main thing about it was that I knew my father-in-law had heard me cussing him out. I don't remember to who. Oh, excuse me, because I felt like my husband's bad behaviors were as a result of his father. I learned later that I was totally wrong about that. But anyway, I knew that he knew I had not been graceful or, grateful or anything. And that really taught me a lesson, that he would come and calm me and help me, even though I had been such an icky daughter-in-law.
That's great. Oh, I'm glad you shared that, Karen. That's because I think that we get so stuck in what we think we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to act, and all of this mumbo jumbo, if you will, and yet there's no judgment afterwards, and there's no judgment from I've never felt that, and as a matter of fact, even when I was in school and being raised as a Christian, and that's all they talked about, and well, that's all I remember. But that's what it felt like all the time, and but it was just it was such a contradictory to what I was feeling. I'm like, oh, this just doesn't even comprehend with me. And as I've gotten older, I have just known more and more that that there's just no judgment. It's all man-made. It's all in our human existence. It's all a matter of perception. Um, and when you were talking about the quantum aspect, Karen or Catherine, sorry, I don't know why I do that. It that's kind of the aspect that I get is this. It's all a matter of perspective, and because every single one of us has a completely different perspective on everything. We all, but yet, I mean, we all are having an experience together, this massive experience, but we all see it differently. So it's like it's both. It's everything. It's nothing. It's all together. It's all separate. It the only way it can be explained is in quantum perception, quantum methods, because it doesn't make any sense. So it doesn't seem to half the time, because you can say one thing and then someone else hears something completely different and they see it differently, and it's all different. It's like I'm sitting here saying it's all going to be okay, and they're like, are you insane? This is insanity right now. I get it. It's yeah, I my heart goes out to everyone out there that's experiencing this suffering and pain, and the insanity, and I know there's a lot of you out there that are caught up in it, even though you just know that it's all going to be okay, and I feel for you too. It's like being caught in a tsunami, and you're just being tossed around in whatever direction, and with everything that's going on around you, and my heart goes out to all of you, everyone who's suffering right now. I can't even tell you how much I want to just send you peace and send you love and send you all of I don't know, something to make it easier, to make it better. So,
Give people the benefit of the doubt. Even if you think that what they're doing is the most vile and horrible thing that anybody could ever do, for just a moment, imagine that you just don't see the whole picture, and that in the big picture of things, they are serving all of us on a very deep level. And love that person even more for choosing such a difficult assignment to take on, where everybody would hate them. Can you imagine, as a soul, picking an assignment where and all your guides are in the room telling you everybody on the planet is going to hate you for what you do, and still saying, I will do this for you. So give everybody the benefit of the doubt. We're in this together, guys. And it all serves, even if you don't see the whole picture. Love you guys.
love you guys too. Well, for those of you who are watching this as a recording, if you'd like to join us and get in on this conversation, we'd love to have you. You can find us at mindsetmasterycollective.com. That is our Facebook group where you can jump in there and connect with us. And then there's always going to be a link for you to join this each week. We get together on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. Most Saturday mornings. Sometimes we don't, for whatever life reasons, but okay, for the most part we do. We've been doing this since 2013 now, so seven years, long time. So feel free to jump in. We'd love to have you. With that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.